The arena was louder than ever. Creatures from 100 worlds sat in the stands, shouting and laughing, ready to see another hopeless soul fall. The trial grounds had taken champions, warriors, beasts, and broken them all. But this time, it was different. From the giant silver gates, a small figure walked out. The crowd went quiet. It was a child, a girl, a human girl. She didn't wear armor. She didn't carry a weapon. Her hair was tied in a loose braid, her clothes simple. She didn't look like a fighter. She looked like someone who didn't belong here at all, and yet she was smiling. The crowd burst into laughter again. "Is this a joke?" shouted a tall reptilian in the front row. "She won't last a minute," growled a tusked alien general beside him. But in the arena control room, one of the observers wasn't laughing. An old alien with bright blue eyes stared at the screen. "There's something wrong," he whispered. "Why is she smiling?" The girl walked to the center of the arena floor, her steps calm, her eyes steady. She looked around at the metal walls, the glowing lights, the giant screens showing her face. She didn't flinch. A loud buzzer rang. Her first test was about to begin. The gate across from her began to open, steam hissing from the sides. Something huge moved inside, something with red eyes and iron-like skin. It stepped out, twice as tall as her, covered in armor, claws sharp enough to cut stone. The arena cheered. "Crush her!" some shouted. "Break her!" But she just looked up and smiled again. She didn't take a fighting stance, she didn't run, she simply waited. The creature roared and charged. The ground shook with each step, but the girl didn't move. The audience held its breath. The beast raised a claw the size of her whole body, and just as it came down, the screen went black. The only sound was her soft voice, echoing through the arena. "I'm not afraid of you." The galaxy didn't laugh after that. Not again. The arena was still buzzing from what had just happened. No one could explain how the human girl had survived. She hadn't fought the creature like a warrior. She hadn't run like a victim. She had simply moved at the right moment, watched, waited, and acted with calm no one expected. The beast hadn't been defeated by strength. It had been outsmarted. And the way she walked away, still smiling, made even the most fearsome gladiators shift, uncomfortably in their seats. In the control chamber above, the overseers gathered around a round table, their voices low and sharp. "She's just a child," one said. "But she didn't blink," said another. "Not once. She must be studied, observed, tested again." Down below, the girl sat quietly in a resting cell. She wasn't chained because she hadn't tried to escape. She wasn't questioned because she didn't speak. Her hands were folded in her lap, her eyes closed. The arena walls couldn't reach her thoughts. What no one knew was that the girl wasn't trained for war. She was trained for stillness. On Earth, far from this alien world, she had lived with someone who taught her the power of silence, of watching before reacting, of reading the room before speaking. When the door to her chamber opened, she opened her eyes and stood without being told. Her second trial was not in the arena. It was in a sealed chamber deep underground. No enemies, no weapons, just walls and lights. The room hummed to life. Screens turned on around her, filling the space with images. Her home, her family, Earth, twisted and fading. She saw a version of herself, alone and lost, calling out. The voices were haunting, broken, sad. This was no physical test. It was designed to break her mind. The trial was known as the mirror. It used the deepest fears of the challenger to create a maze of emotion and illusion. Most challengers screamed. Many fell into despair. Some never came out. But the human girl simply walked forward. Her smile faded now, not because she was afraid, but because she understood what this test wanted. It wanted to find fear in her heart. She passed one screen and paused. A voice whispered, "You were never meant to win." Another, "You are alone. No one will come for you." But she kept walking. In her mind, she heard another voice. A real one. Her guardian's voice from Earth. Fear is like smoke. It only stays if you feed it. She stopped walking. Then she did something no one expected. She sat down, not because she was tired, but because she refused to play the game. She closed her eyes and smiled once more. The arena control room panicked. Readings were going off the charts. The simulation was losing control. "She's overriding the program," shouted one of the technicians. "How is that possible?" But the old observer didn't shout. He leaned forward and whispered again. "She's not fighting the trial. She's making it lose interest." The lights in the simulation room flickered. The walls began to shift. The voices went silent. And then, nothing. Silence. The simulation shut down completely. The girl stood up, still calm, and walked toward the exit without looking back. When the door opened, thousands of eyes were waiting. She stepped out, lifted her head toward the light, and smiled again. The crowd didn't cheer this time. They stared, not because they feared her, but because for the first time, they didn't know what she would do next. Every record from the arena's long, brutal history had one pattern. The third trial was always where the cracks began to show. Even the strongest fighters, those with muscle, skill, or power, would start to unravel here. But this time the pattern was already broken. The human girl hadn't cracked. She hadn't even flinched, and that terrified the ones running the show. In the audience, whispers had begun to spread across species. Whispers not of defeat, but of curiosity, of hope, of something different. No one could explain how she was, still standing, much less how she had passed 2 rounds without force. The overseers, seated in a high room behind a dark glass wall, had grown restless. Not because she was a threat in the usual sense, but because she wasn't behaving the way they expected. She didn't rage. She didn't beg. She simply smiled and kept walking forward. "She's unshakable," one muttered. "She's dangerous," another replied. "Then we must test her in a way no one has been tested." This time there was no physical chamber, no illusion room. She was brought to a long, cold hall with hundreds of steps. At the end of the hall stood a figure, unfamiliar, yet familiar. Not a creature, not a hologram, but a being wearing the form of someone the girl once loved, her guardian. He had raised her on Earth, far from cities, deep in forests, in quiet lands where wind and stars spoke louder than machines. He had taught her everything: how to listen, how to move, how to remain still in storms. He had told her stories, taught her to survive. Then one day he was gone, and now, here he was, or something wearing his face. The girl stared at the figure without stepping forward. The arena had changed the game. This wasn't a trial of the body or the mind. It was a trial of the heart. The figure spoke in his voice. "You don't belong. Here, come with me. We'll go home." The girl's hands trembled slightly. Her smile faded. She remembered his warmth, his voice, the way he used to hum when fixing things. But something was off. The tone, the rhythm. It wasn't him. She took a deep breath. "If you were really him," she said, "you wouldn't ask me to leave." The figure stepped closer, speaking more softly. "You've done enough. You've proven yourself. Let it go." But she shook her head. "My journey didn't start for myself," she said. "And it won't end with me running away." Behind the glass, the overseers exchanged confused looks. They had expected her to cry, to collapse, to hold on to the illusion. But she did the opposite. She reached out her hand, not in fear, but with kindness. "I forgive you for pretending to be him," she said gently. "But I won't follow a lie." And with that, the figure's form shimmered, faded, and disappeared into smoke. The hall went dark. Then a new light appeared, above her. A path opened beneath her feet, glowing, leading forward. The audience, who had expected another show of survival, now watched something else. They were witnessing strength of a different kind. a strength that came from truth. The girl walked forward step by step, through the quiet. The lights followed her like stars, chasing the night, and behind her silence filled the arena, not empty silence, but one filled with awe. Even those who once laughed now leaned closer to see what she would do next. For the first time in generations, the arena didn't feel like a place of fear. It felt like a place holding its breath. The girl, small, quiet human, had passed through 3 of the galaxy's most feared trials. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't fought. She hadn't begged. And somehow that made her presence heavier than any warrior who had ever stood where she now walked. News of her spread like light through darkness. Children across star systems watched her face on holoscreens. Traders paused at their stations. Soldiers forgot their drills. They weren't cheering for her to win or lose. They were watching because they didn't know what she was. How could someone so gentle move through fire like it couldn't touch her? Behind closed doors, the arena masters grew uneasy. They had built these trials to entertain, to control, to prove dominance. But this girl was changing the meaning. And worse, people were starting to care. "She is not breaking," one judge said. "No," the old overseer replied. "She is changing us." And so for the 4th trial, they made a plan. She was led into a wide chamber surrounded by watchers, warriors, judges, audience members, and beings from across the stars. But unlike the others, this chamber had no monster, no machine, no illusion. Instead, 4 other champions stood waiting. Each one was the best of their kind, a winged tactician from the skies of Velmor, a swift and silent tracker from the icy caves of Newell, a shadow stepper who moved without sound, and a mind reader who saw into weakness. All were brought together not to destroy her, but to challenge her as equals. If she truly belonged among the greatest, she had to earn their respect. As the trial began, the winged tactician stepped forward and spoke in perfect, clear words. "You don't belong here," she said. "You're not one of us." The others nodded, not cruelly, just firmly. "You smile too much," said the cave-born tracker. "You speak too little." But the human girl didn't argue. She simply bowed her head, then looked each one in the eyes. Slowly, patiently. "I know I don't look like you," she said, "but I listen, I learn, and I walk forward." They moved fast, surrounding her, testing her with movement, questions, silent pressure. She didn't fight back. She asked the tactician a question about her wings. She complimented the tracker's focus. She guessed the shadow stepper's rhythm. And to the mind reader she said, "I know you're searching for fear in me, but you won't find it today." One by one, their rhythm broke. Not because she attacked them, but because she didn't treat them like enemies. And for the first time, something unusual happened in the trial. The challengers stopped moving. They stepped back. The winged tactician bowed low. "You don't belong here," she said again, "but maybe that's what makes you important." The entire chamber fell silent. From the crowd came a strange sound, not cheers, not laughter, but something deeper. Respect. The kind that doesn't come from strength, but from spirit. The girl looked around, her smile soft but steady. Then she turned, stepped off the trial floor, and walked away without a word. And behind her, 4 of the galaxy's greatest didn't feel defeated. They felt honored. In the arena's control room, one overseer finally said what the others feared to speak aloud. "If she wins again, this arena may never be the same." By now, the arena no longer sounded like it used to. The crowd didn't shout for defeat. They didn't chant for dominance. They waited quietly, as if something sacred was unfolding before them. The human girl had changed everything. 4 trials had passed, each meant to tear her down, yet each one left her stronger in ways no one could measure. She didn't rise by conquering others. She rose by standing still when the storm came. And now, only one trial remained before the final unknown. But the 5th was unlike anything before. This wasn't a test of strength, or of fear, or of cleverness. It was a test of choice. She was led through a long, curved corridor made of dark stone and soft lights. The path was silent, but not empty. Screens blinked quietly on the walls, showing images from her past, moments she'd long buried. A flash of her first night alone, a broken pendant, a memory of her guardian's laugh, the stars above Earth the last time she saw home. At the end of the corridor stood two doors. One shimmered with light. It was marked in golden symbols. Through it she could see Earth, green fields, clear skies, safety, peace. Her name written across the stars. The other door was plain metal. No light, no path, just shadow. It offered nothing, no reward, no comfort, only the unknown. A voice echoed through the chamber, calm and neutral. You have earned the right to leave. You owe nothing more. Choose peace, or choose the path that continues. The arena audience watched in silence. In this trial, no one would stop her. No creature would chase her. No illusion would tempt her. It was her decision alone. And that made it the hardest trial of all. She stepped toward the golden door. It was warm, familiar. Her fingers touched its edge, and then she paused. She looked back, not at the plain door, but at the memory of what had brought her here. She remembered the others still trapped by fear, by silence, by pain. The ones watching her, hoping they might feel strong just because she kept going. Her hand fell away from the golden door. She turned and walked toward the shadowed one. A quiet gasp spread through the arena. The door opened with no sound, only darkness beyond. She stepped through without hesitation. But just before she disappeared, she looked over her shoulder. Not to say goodbye, but to let the galaxy know. She was not choosing to stay because she had to. She was choosing to continue because she believed, and in that choice something ancient inside the arena cracked, not in destruction, but in release. For the first time, the crowd didn't just see her as the human girl who wouldn't break. They saw her as a mirror of what they could become. The door closed behind her, sealing her away from the crowd, from the lights, from everything the galaxy thought it understood. She had chosen the harder path, the one no one had ever taken. Not because it offered glory, not because it promised survival, but because it was the path no one else was willing to walk. The corridor beyond the final door was not made of stone or steel. It was light and shadow, memory and silence. The air didn't move, and yet every step she took felt like it echoed through time itself. She wasn't in the arena anymore. She was somewhere older, deeper, closer to the true heart of this place. This final trial wasn't meant for the body. It wasn't meant for the mind. It was meant for the soul. As she walked, the path shifted beneath her feet. Not physically, but in feeling. Her surroundings began to reflect not what she feared, but what others feared about her. She saw herself through alien eyes, a creature too soft to survive, a being too kind to understand war, a smile mistaken for weakness. And yet, she kept walking. Then, the path split into a circle. At the center of that circle, a chair, simple, empty, waiting, and around it, nothing. No judges, no crowd, no monsters, just a voice. Not booming, not cold, gentle, curious. Sit, child, not to be tested, but to be seen. She did, calmly. A light rose around her, soft gold, not harsh. Images began to form in the air, moments from her journey, but from the perspective of others. She saw the creature from the first trial, confused at her calm. The mirror chamber, losing power as her heart remained steady. The four champions, now speaking of her not as a threat, but as a symbol. The light paused. Then came the final image. A view from high above the galaxy. Countless worlds watching, her story unfold. The way children mimicked her stance. The way elders spoke of her with wonder. She wasn't supposed to win. She wasn't even supposed to matter. And yet, she had become a question. Not how did she survive, but why did her way work? The voice returned, not asking but offering. You may return home. You have nothing left to prove. But she shook her head gently. I didn't come for proof, she said. I came to open a door for the ones who come after me. Silence fell again. Then, for the first time, the light changed. It spread, not just in the chamber, but beyond, into the arena, into the skies, into the minds of all who watched. The final trial had no winner, no prize, no ending, because it was never about passing, it was about becoming. When the girl stepped back into the arena at last, the crowd stood, not shouting, not cheering, but rising. They didn't see a survivor. They saw someone who had quietly rewritten everything. And as she smiled, one last time, the arena, once built to break spirits, now echoed with something no one had expected: hope.